3 or more of these women insinuated that Matt has a big Hi everyone, welcome back to DimitriTube. The Bachelor, Night 3, Matt James, let's talk about it. As always, if you're enjoying these reviews, please pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell. I've actually had an uptick in my number of new subscribers, so I just want to say thank you to all the new subscribers to my channel. I really appreciate your support. It means a lot to me. Now, I will not waste any more time. Let's dive in and start talking about the episode, because it was good. The episode starts off, we're returning to the rose ceremony where Sarah is about to faint. Now, I don't know if Sarah was faking it. I mean, it could have been real. It's probably 3 a.m. She's a little tipsy. She's been standing in heels for like 4 or 5 hours now. It's possible it was a real fainting spell. I don't know. But what I do know is that these producers are real messy, because during this fainting scene, the producers inserted commentary from one of Victoria's confessionals, and she says,
"I've definitely never fainted before. I've never even fainted. You need to pull it together."
So the rose ceremony starts back up and they're passing out the roses, and there is 1 rose left. And at this point, I'm like, please give Victoria a rose. Please give Victoria a rose. And I know y'all are going to drag me in the comments, and I know y'all hate me for liking Victoria, but she's the only one pushing the storyline forward and kind of forcing these women to have interactions with one another. So the producers build up anticipation, intense background music starts, and Victoria gets a rose. I was also excited because my prediction was correct. Mary Lynn got sent home and Victoria got to stay. Again, I do not read any of the spoilers. I try to guess what happens on the show from just watching episode to episode each week. And if you want to check out the video where I made that prediction, I'll link it above. Okay, now we're going into the first group date, and the first group date is clearly a product promotion for Chris Harrison's book. For the group date, the women have to write an erotic love story and then share it with a live audience. They later find out the live audience is just the other women in the house who weren't picked for the group date. Now, this date was an entire mess. Like, I can't even. Now, I get it. Y'all are in quarantine and the producers are struggling to find ideas for dates, but I really think they could have done better than this. Anywho, let's go on and drag Matt first. So if we're being 100, Matt's story was not good. It was very matter of fact. She dropped her purse. He touched her leg. He touched her shoulders with both hands. To me, there was not enough description and not enough adjectives for my taste, but these women were drooling all over him, and it made me realize something. So Matt is 6'5", and the majority of women like tall men. You can disagree with me, whatever, put it in the comments, but the majority of women do want someone tall. And Matt was a college football player, so more than likely he was also a star football player at his high school. So Matt has probably not had to try hard to get women, and it shows. Matt is literally reading a story that sounds like it was written by a middle schooler, and the girls are drooling all over it. Secondly, ABC, why do you have these women writing sex erotica? This is supposed to be family friendly. Please clean it up. Now, there's only a few things I want to mention about this date. First, a lot of these women made insinuations that Matt has a big It is 2021. We need to leave the Mandingo fantasy in the past where it belongs. 3 or more of these women insinuated that Matt has a big Like, I get it. It's an erotic literature challenge, but these women are putting a lot of pressure on Matt, and if he's not actually hung, that's really gonna suck. Yep, it's that time, outfit of the episode. Now, there really was not that much fashion this episode, so this week I'm giving it to the fashion mess of the week. And I really just felt like this outfit needed to be called out. I am calling out Serena C's outfit. She was wearing a black bikini top with black leather pants, boots, and then she draped a jacket over her shoulders. So, first of all, what situation calls for a bikini top with a jacket draped over? Secondly, I think it's cold outside. Like, Matt is in a turtleneck and a full suit. Like, girl, you're gonna catch a pneumonia walking around Nemacolin, Pennsylvania in a bikini top. And last thing about the group date. So after the date was over, the women were talking and they said this date was very empowering to share their fantasies and tell Matt what they want and what they like. Now, this is a competition of 20 plus women, and each of you is sharing a sexual story to best get Matt's attention. What about that is empowering? Maybe I'm missing something. Can somebody let me know below in the comments? Oh, and one more thing I almost forgot. At this point, Sarah is starting to spiral. She is having trouble dealing with listening to all these stories of women fantasizing about Matt. Sarah spiraling out of control like this, to me, was very extra. Now, the way the producers edited it, it made it seem like a very intense situation for Sarah, but I think if you were there in the audience, it was more fun and silly, if anything, because some of these girls were like dying laughing, and Victoria had Matt practically rolling on the floor. Okay, now we're going into the night portion of the group date, and we have a one-on-one with Matt and Rachael. I don't have much to say here, but there is definitely a connection between Matt and Rachael. Also, Matt kisses with his eyes open, and it's really weird. Maybe because he's so tall, he has to see where he's going so he doesn't bump heads with these women. Next, we have a one-on-one with Bree, and y'all, I still do not see the connection between Bree and Matt. This one-on-one just looked so forced to me. I listened to a few podcasts and watch a few Bachelor reviews, and everyone else seemed to say that Bree and Matt had a connection, but like, I don't see it. Maybe I'm the only one who doesn't see it. Next, we have a one-on-one with Katie, and during her one-on-one, Sarah, who is not part of the group date, interrupts her to have a one-on-one with Matt. Now, let's unpack this. Both Matt and Sarah were wrong in this situation. Matt, from the start, should have been like, sorry, Sarah, you're not part of this group date, and I need to give these other women a chance. That's what he should have told Sarah when she interrupted the date. And even if he did end up giving Sarah some time to interrupt, it would have set the tone that she needs to make this quick. And Matt is a real estate broker, and he's lived in New York for like the past 3 years, so I know he knows how to get to the point of things. And Sarah tells the women, can I have a quick 5 minutes? She does not make it quick. She like beats around the bush and then talks about her feelings when she's in the house and all this other nonsense, when the first thing out of her mouth should have been, I think I'm going home. Like, she should have started with that. Also, another issue here is that I don't think Matt is that into Katie, because Matt seemed to be willing to give Sarah as much time as she wanted, and he didn't seem to be in any sort of rush to go back to talking to Katie. And at one point, when Katie is trying to interrupt their conversation and get her time back, Sarah is like, I don't know what to do. And then Matt is just a sitting duck and acts like he doesn't know what to do. At that point, Matt should have made a decision on who to continue the date with. Also, when Katie and him ended the conversation, they did this kind of like side hug, and I just don't think he's that into her. So after that, Sarah meets up with the rest of the girls on the group date and apologizes, and for the most part, the girls don't really accept the apology. And in a confessional, Sarah says, I feel like I have a target on my back now. And I'm like, girl, you have a target on your back because you created it. She is forgetting that this is a game show, and in this game show, time is everything. So if you're gonna go and interrupt other contestants' time, it's gonna be a problem. So as Sarah is leaving, she has a quick talk with Victoria first, and then she has another talk with Katie. And Sarah says something really important here. Sarah confides in Katie and tells her that she's thinking about going home and not staying on the show. Now, this was a really stupid move on Sarah's part, and we're gonna talk about it more later in the video. I'm gonna come back to it, I promise. Now we're going into a one-on-one with Serena P. Now Matt goes to Nemacolin and meets up with all the women to pick up Serena P for their all-day one-on-one date. So he asks about Sarah, and she's not there with the rest of the women, so he goes upstairs to her room to check on her. And during this checkup, Sarah mentions again that she's thinking about leaving, and Matt encourages her to stay. Now, I just felt like this was very toxic, and this was more than likely producer play right here, because clearly this environment is very toxic for Sarah, but he's encouraging her to stay. Now, before Matt and Serena P leave for the date, he tells all of the women that he would have spent time with any of the women if they were feeling that type of way. And then he goes on and places blame on the fact that this is his first time being part of The Bachelor. Now, this was very toxic, and I did not like that he did this. Matt's basically saying, if you just pretend like you're sad, then you're gonna get more attention from him. Moving on to the date with Serena. So for their date, they ride horses and they split a charcuterie board. This date was really cute. Now, while they're sitting down, Matt says, you have to show me how to make a cheese board because I've never made one. And y'all, literally, that was the blackest thing that Matt has said so far. And I'm even more proud because he did it on Martin Luther King Day. Now, if you all don't know, a charcuterie board is a very Caucasian thing. So the fact that Matt didn't know how to make one was not surprising for me. I really like this date between Serena P and Matt. It's clear they have a solid connection. And while they're sitting down and chatting, Serena makes fun of Matt because he had turtles growing up. And they have a little back and forth about these turtles. This is really interesting because Serena challenges Matt, and Matt seems to really enjoy it. So then we move on to the dinner portion of the date. Serena P's makeup looks amazing. And Serena asks Matt about his previous relationship, and Matt says he dated for 4 months, but didn't want to put a title on it unless he saw himself getting married. Now, this made Matt sound like he ain't. Now, it's clear to me the woman he was dating brought up the idea of putting a title on their relationship. And Matt was just like, I don't see marrying you, so I'm not going to put a title on it. Which is very honest, but it's also very cold-hearted. I do wish we had more of an explanation here, but for me, it definitely put Matt in kind of a bad light for me. Okay, now we're going back to the girls at Nemacolin, and a date card shows up, and Sarah finally comes downstairs. Sarah tries apologizing to the girls, and she says, I knew what I was getting into. I just didn't expect it to be this difficult this fast. And if you guys had the chance to get to know me over the past, hopefully you would know my heart. When Sarah says past, Victoria interrupts her and says nobody knows you. Now, this was a really weak apology on Sarah's part. Like, girl, how can we get to know you if you just hide out in your room for 3 days? And also, the fact that she hid in her room instead of talking to these girls just made her look more suspicious. So after that, a few more of the girls gang up on her, and they call Katie manipulative, toxic, calculating, and they just drag her. Now, the internet very much felt like the girls were just being bullies to Sarah, and I disagree. This is a game show, and Sarah broke the rules so she could advance herself, and by doing so, she threw multiple other girls under the bus. That is not okay, and the girls have a right to be mad. But I will say one read I do have is Anna told Sarah that you haven't had it difficult. I did not like when Anna said that because you don't tell other people how to feel or how they should feel. I just didn't like that. Also, before we move on, quick note about Victoria. Victoria is yet again stealing the show. She is literally instigating pretty much every single fight this episode. And in pretty much every scenario this episode, she's right. Now, I've mentioned this before in a previous review and I'm sticking to it. I think we're just seeing so much Victoria because Matt is boring. So someone else has to hold down the show. So after Sarah gets roasted, she's crying by herself, and then Katie meets up with her to have a chat. Katie says that it was really hard for her to watch, and she did not like that the other girls did that to her. But this was ridiculous because Katie was the reason it started. Now, remember the point I was making earlier that I said I was going to come back to? Well, here it is. When Katie had that one-on-one with Sarah, Sarah told Katie that she was thinking about going home, and she's not sure if she could stay here any longer. So then the next day, Katie turns around and tells Mari and Piper that Sarah is thinking about going home. Now, Katie should have known on some level that the other women would use this information against Sarah. Katie literally gave the girls ammo to use against Sarah. So back to the one-on-one with Sarah and Katie. Sarah says she's leaving the show, and then Katie encourages her to stay. At this point, Katie is just playing both sides, and I really don't like that. Katie also encourages Sarah to stay because she wants Matt to explore all the possible relationships so he knows for sure what he wants, and so Katie's not a backup plan. Now, a lot of the internet is standing Katie so hard and they love her so much, but I did not like that she said this. Because in the real world, I do not think she would do that. If you were in the real world, would you encourage the guy you're dating to date other women to make sure you're the one he wants to be with? I really doubt she would do that if she was in the real world. And even though I don't like Katie, after this we do actually get a sweet moment. Sarah confides in her and tells her about how her father is dying, and then Katie relates to her and mentions how her father has passed away as well, and Katie consoling her was just so sweet. So in the final scene, Sarah goes to meet Matt to have another talk. Sarah tells Matt that she was attacked by the women in the house after staying in her room all day. Now, I don't feel bad for Sarah because she's withholding information. She forgot to mention the fact that the girls were also mad because she interrupted their group date. I just thought that made Matt look a little dumb. Matt should be able to infer that 20 plus women would not be mad at one just because she stayed in her room all day. Matt may have not been able to figure out exactly what happened, but he should should be able to realize that something suspect was happening with Sarah. So after that, Sarah eliminates herself, and then she starts crying in the Uber XL. Now, I do think her and Matt did have a connection because you know it's real if they cry in the Uber XL. So personally, I'm glad that Sarah went home. If Sarah was spiraling this early on, it's good she just eliminated herself because she wouldn't have made it through the process. And that is the end of the episode and all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this review, please pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell. And I will see you all next week. Have a good one. Bye.